What if everything you've been told about modern emergency medicine is fundamentally designed to drain your wallet rather than heal your body? Right now, millions of people are one accident away from a multi-thousand-dollar hospital bill for something as simple as a deep cut. But while the modern medical establishment wants you to believe that sterile plastic threads and sterile emergency rooms are your only line of defense against infection and scarring, an entire community has been quietly proving them wrong for generations. They don't use sterile ER bays, they don't use insurance, and they absolutely do not use stitches. Instead, they rely on a powerful traditional paste that costs less than $4 to make right in your kitchen. This isn't just some outdated folklore. It is a highly effective tissue-knitting remedy that stops bleeding, prevents infection, and heals skin so cleanly it leaves doctors speechless. Yet, you will never hear a pharmaceutical representative or a hospital administrator admit it exists. Why would they? There is absolutely no profit in a $4 cure that renders their expensive procedures obsolete. In this video, we are pulling back the curtain on the medical industry's worst nightmare. We are going to reveal the exact time-tested recipe for this Amish miracle paste, the fascinating science behind why it works faster than conventional treatments, and how you can make it yourself to protect your family and your finances forever. The information you are about to see is polarizing. It is heavily gate-kept, and it might just change the way you look at first aid forever. Stick around, because the medical establishment would love nothing more than for this video to disappear. Now, I know exactly what is going through your mind right now. Your skepticism radar is probably screaming at maximum volume. You are looking at this title and listening to these words, and a voice in the back of your head is saying, "Wait a minute, putting a homemade concoction into an open, bleeding wound sounds like a one-way ticket to a horrific infection, blood poisoning, or a severe case of sepsis." And you know what? That is a completely valid, rational concern. If you went to medical school, or if you've just lived in modern society for more than 5 minutes, you have been deeply conditioned to believe that anything entering a broken layer of skin must be processed through an industrial autoclave, wrapped in medical-grade plastic, and applied by someone wearing $100 worth of personal protective equipment. We are taught to fear nature, and we are taught to fear our own environment when our bodies are compromised. But let's pause for a second and look at the community behind this remedy. The Amish are not reckless, and they are certainly not stupid. They are a deeply pragmatic, highly observant people who live and work in environments where serious cuts, gashes, and puncture wounds are a daily reality of agricultural life. They work with heavy iron machinery, sharp tools, and unpredictable livestock every single day. If their traditional wound paste caused raging infections and killed people from blood poisoning, they would have stopped using it generations ago. They continue to use it because it delivers results that challenge the very foundation of what modern medicine claims is necessary. But before we dive into the actual ingredients and how this paste physically interacts with human tissue, we need to dismantle a major misconception. There is a dangerous myth out there that alternative medicine advocates think a single home remedy can fix absolutely everything. Let's be completely transparent and clear right now. This paste is not a magical wand. If someone severs a major artery, if a piece of farm equipment causes a compound fracture where the bone is protruding through the skin, or if a wound is so deep that internal organs are compromised, a topical paste is not going to save them. The Amish themselves are not opposed to modern hospitals for extreme, life-threatening trauma. When a true emergency happens, they will call an ambulance just like anyone else. But for the vast majority of deep flesh wounds, lacerations, and severe cuts, the kind of injuries that send the average American into a panic, sprinting to the emergency room only to sit on a plastic chair for 4 hours and walk out with a $3,000 bill for 5 plastic stitches, the Amish choose a different path. They choose a method that doesn't just pull the skins together, but actually feeds the tissue and accelerates the body's natural ability to close the gap. This brings us to the biggest logistical question you probably have. How on earth can a physical paste replace a physical piece of thread? When you get a deep cut at a modern hospital, a doctor uses a curved needle to loop a synthetic thread through both sides of your flesh, pulling them tight and tying a knot. The entire philosophy of modern wound care is mechanical tension. It forces the edges of the skin to stay touching so that the body can eventually glue them back together with scar tissue. But stitches have a dark side that hospitals don't like to talk about. The act of punching a needle through healthy tissue creates new microtraumas around the primary wound. It restricts localized blood flow, which is exactly what your body needs to heal. Furthermore, those synthetic threads act as a literal highway for bacteria, pulling microbes from the outside environment deep into the layers of your dermis. This is why stitches so frequently become inflamed, red, and infected, requiring an additional round of expensive synthetic antibiotics. The Amish wound paste operates on an entirely different, vastly superior biological principle. Instead of using mechanical force to bind the skin, it uses the natural principles of drawing, contraction, and cellular proliferation. When this paste is applied to a deep, open laceration, it creates a highly osmotic, sterile microenvironment. Because of the specific ratio of active ingredients, the paste creates an environment where bacteria simply cannot survive, while simultaneously pulling out deep-seated debris, dirt, and microscopic pathogens that a standard water rinse would miss. As the paste settles into the wound, it begins to gently constrict. It doesn't pull the skin with the violent pinching force of a suture. Rather, it creates a uniform, gentle pressure across the entire surface area of the injury. This pressure stimulates localized blood circulation, bringing an army of white blood cells and fibroblasts directly to the site of the trauma. Fibroblasts are the cellular architects of your body. They are the cells responsible for manufacturing collagen and knitting your flesh back together. By optimizing the environment and increasing blood flow rather than restricting it, the tissue begins to regenerate from the bottom up, closing the gap naturally, rapidly, and seamlessly. This brings us to another massive concern that most people have. What about the scarring? We have been told that if you don't get stitches for a deep cut, you will be left with a horrific, jagged, raised scar that looks like something out of a horror movie. But the reality is often the exact opposite. Because stitches hold skin under intense unnatural tension, the body often produces an overabundance of disorganized, chaotic collagen fibers trying to hold the rip together against that pulling force. This results in hypertrophic scars, those thick, raised, red lines that remain sensitive and ugly for years. Because the Amish wound paste allows the skin to heal under natural, relaxed conditions while keeping the tissue deeply hydrated and nourished, the collagen fibers lay down in a smooth, organized, parallel pattern. The result is a healed wound that is often completely flush with the surrounding skin, leaving behind a faint, flat line that is barely noticeable compared to the tracks left behind by surgical needles. So, what is actually in this stuff? If it is so incredibly effective, why haven't you seen it on the shelves of your local pharmacy? Why hasn't a major pharmaceutical conglomerate bought the recipe, put a fancy logo on it, and sold it to you for $200 a tube? The answer to that question reveals the deeply broken, profit-driven nature of our modern healthcare system. To understand why this paste remains hidden in plain sight, you have to understand the mathematics of modern medicine. Drug companies cannot patent natural substances. You cannot patent an herb. You cannot patent a basic mineral, and you cannot patent a traditional cooking process. If a multi-billion-dollar corporation cannot secure a strict patent on a product, they cannot control the price, they cannot stop competitors from making it, and they cannot guarantee a massive return on investment for their shareholders. Therefore, they have absolutely zero financial incentive to research it, validate it, or promote it to the public. Think about the structure of a modern hospital. A hospital is not a charity. It is a high-overhead business with massive administrative costs, expensive legal teams, and millions of dollars of high-tech equipment to pay off. When you walk into an emergency room with a deep cut, they aren't just charging you for the literal 10 cents worth of plastic thread used to stitch you up. They are charging you for the facility fee, the nurse's time, the doctor's specialized consultation, the sterile tray fee, and the administrative processing overhead. A single laceration repair is a highly profitable routine cash cow for an emergency room. If a doctor were to look at your cut, open a cabinet, pull out a $4 jar of traditional paste, slather it on your skin, wrap it in a clean bandage, and send you home for $5, that hospital would lose thousands of dollars in potential revenue. Multiply that by the millions of minor trauma cases that happen across the country every single year, and you are talking about billions of dollars in lost corporate profit. The system doesn't hide this information because they are actively trying to harm you. They hide it because your self-sufficiency is entirely incompatible with their business model. They need you to be dependent on their infrastructure, their prescriptions, and their specialized tools, because that dependence is exactly what keeps their stock prices climbing. But the Amish don't care about corporate stock prices. They care about what works, what is practical, and what keeps their families healthy without burying them under a mountain of debt. The heart of this miracle paste relies on a handful of easily accessible, incredibly potent natural ingredients that work in perfect synergy. The foundational base of the remedy typically revolves around two powerhouse components: pure, raw, unpasteurized honey, specifically buckwheat or wildflower honey, and activated charcoal or bentonite clay, often combined with natural soothing lipids like tallow, olive oil, or beeswax, and infused with specific herbs like comfrey or plantain leaf. Let's break down the actual science of why these specific ingredients create such a devastatingly effective healing environment. First, let's look at raw honey. For decades, modern medicine laughed at the idea of using honey on wounds, dismissing it as primitive witchcraft. But in recent years, researchers have been forced to admit that raw honey is one of the most powerful antimicrobial agents on the face of the earth. When raw honey comes into contact with fluid from a wound, a natural enzyme within the honey called glucose oxidase reacts to produce trace amounts of hydrogen peroxide. This isn't like the harsh brown bottle of hydrogen peroxide you buy at the grocery store, which floods a wound and destroys healthy living cells along with the bad ones. The honey releases hydrogen peroxide in a slow, controlled, microscopic drip feed. It is just enough to ruthlessly destroy pathogenic bacteria, including antibiotic-resistant strains like Mr. Sa, without causing a single bit of cellular damage to your body's healing tissues. Furthermore, honey is highly viscous and hygroscopic, meaning it draws moisture out of the surrounding environment. Bacteria require moisture to multiply. By drinking up all the available water molecules, the honey literally dehydrates the bacteria to death. At the same time, it forms a thick, protective physical barrier that keeps external dirt and air out of the raw nerve endings, which drastically reduces the throbbing pain of a fresh cut. Then, you have the drawing agents: activated charcoal and bentonite clay. When an injury occurs out in the real world, the wound is rarely perfectly clean. There are microscopic particles of rust, soil, clothing fibers, and environmental toxins pushed deep into the flesh. If you stitch a wound shut with those particles inside, you are trapping a ticking time bomb of infection beneath the skin. Activated charcoal and bentonite clay act like microscopic vacuum cleaners. Because of their incredibly porous structures and negative electrical charges, they literally attract and bind to positively charged toxins, heavy metals, and bacterial waste products. They pull these impurities out of the deep layers of tissue and hold them securely within the paste, ensuring that the wound remains perfectly pristine throughout the entire healing process. But the real magic, the component that gives this paste its legendary reputation for knitting flesh back together, comes from the addition of traditional healing herbs, most notably comfrey, which is traditionally known in folk medicine by a highly descriptive name: knitbone. Comfrey contains an organic compound called allantoin. If you look at the ingredients of high-end, expensive anti-aging creams and medical scar treatments today, you will often find allantoin listed near the top. Why? Because allantoin is a powerful cell proliferator. It accelerates the rate of mitosis, meaning it forces your cells to divide and multiply at a significantly faster rate than they normally would. When infused into the paste and kept in constant contact with an open cut, the allantoin triggers an explosive, controlled burst of localized tissue growth. It rapidly fills in the gap with new, healthy epithelial cells, effectively sewing the wound closed from the inside out using your body's own biological machinery. When you combine these ingredients into a thick, cohesive salve, you get a remedy that addresses every single phase of wound healing simultaneously. It stops the bleeding by creating a natural matrix for clotting. It thoroughly sanitizes the environment without killing healthy tissue. It draws out embedded contamination. It dramatically lowers inflammation and pain. and it forces the skin to regenerate at hyperspeed. It is an elegant, complete medical system contained within a single jar that costs pennies to assemble. The beauty of this approach is that it shifts the power completely back into your hands. Imagine the peace of mind that comes with knowing that if you, your spouse, or your child suffers a nasty gash while working in the yard, working on a car, or playing outside, your immediate reaction doesn't have to be a panic-stricken calculation of whether you can afford your health insurance deductible this month. You don't have to face the dread of sitting in a chaotic, virus-filled emergency room waiting room for half the night just to have a stranger put a few pieces of plastic thread into your skin. Instead, you can calmly walk to your kitchen pantry, pull out a jar of your own homemade remedy, apply it confidently, wrap it up, and watch your body heal itself with flawless efficiency. Of course, the gatekeepers of institutional medicine will tell you that doing this is dangerous. They will tell you that you are unqualified, that your home is too dirty, and that you must rely exclusively on their corporate monopoly for your survival. But history, science, and the living testimony of self-reliant communities tell an entirely different story. Our ancestors did not survive for thousands of years by being helpless. They survived because they understood the profound, sophisticated chemistry of the natural world around them. By reclaiming this knowledge, you aren't just saving yourself $4 or avoiding a 4-digit hospital bill. You are making a profound statement about your own independence. You are refusing to be a passive consumer in a system that views your injuries as a financial quarterly profit target. You are stepping into a tradition of self-reliance, resilience, and true physical sovereignty. This paste is real, the science behind it is undeniable, and the power to create it belongs entirely to you. Turn away from the fear-mongering of the medical-industrial complex, trust the incredible engineered design of your own human body, and take control of your health once and for all.